happy to welcome you to Centering Disability Inclusion in the City of Toronto's 2026 budget. My name is David Myers. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a Black disabled settler resident in Toronto. I'm the Senior Manager of Independent Living Programs at CILT. And by way of description, I have very short salt and pepper hair. I'm wearing eyeglasses and a blue shirt. Before jump-starting our town hall, we'd like to bless our event with a land acknowledgement. I'm going to read that.
Sorry about that. I'm gonna reshare the screen.
Oh, okay, I'll wait for you.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
There you go.
Thanks, Keith. So we begin by acknowledging that we're all joining virtually. And so we may be on different treaty lands, but CILT is located in Toronto, which is a territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. We recognize the impact of historical and ongoing practices of colonization, and those of us who are settlers know we owe a debt of gratitude to Indigenous people for the opportunity to live, play, and work on these lands. We also honor and stand in solidarity with generations of Indigenous people, also acknowledge our responsibility to decolonize our own lives and to advance a more equitable, just, and inclusive Ontario for everyone, especially those who endure multiple intersecting forms of oppression, like disabled, Indigenous, Black, and other racialized people. The land's also part of the District 1 Spoon Territory, a treaty between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and allied nations to peaceably share and care for this land. And all of those who live, work here are responsible for honoring this treaty in a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Next slide. So we're next going to do a few session guidelines before we actually jumpstart our event. We have access supports, including ASL interpretation. Amanda and Rogue are interpreting for us today, and we also have card captioning provided by CHS. And we also have a note taker, Mint, who's taking notes as well. There will not be a scheduled break, but we encourage you to take breaks as you need them, whether it's a bio break or an access break of some kind. Please enjoy that access. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. If you'd like to speak, you can use the chat or the raise hand function. If possible, please hold questions until we reach the Q&A segment at the end. We're dedicating a good 30 minutes for participation from folks through questions and comments. So maybe if you can hold your questions till then, that'd be great. And we'll be recording the Zoom meeting, but we'll stop recording at the questions and answers section. Usually we record a meeting and post the video on our YouTube channel for access by anybody who wants to look at an event that's already passed. We want to co-create a space in which everyone will feel heard and respected. We're committed to ensuring a safe space for all. And so, we're prepared to actually remove somebody from the space if we think that they're actually speaking or conducting in a way that causes harm. Next slide, please. So this is our brief agenda. Welcome and land acknowledgement was just done. I'll say a few words afterwards, and then Social Plan Toronto, one of our presenters, will be here speaking about the budget for about 20 minutes. And then TTCriders, another partner presenting as well, will be speaking for about 20 minutes after that. We're really honored to have both partners with us for this event. Every year, we take a lot of policy information from both organizations on the budget. And so thrilled to have you both here, folks, to unpack the budget for everybody. Then we'll have a message from our Executive Director, Wendy Porch. And after that, we'll have the Q&A. And then on the end, we'll have resources that we'll be sending afterwards to folks who are registered for the event. Thanks so much. Next slide, please. And I'll share a little bit about CILT and the GTA Coalition for those folks, especially who may not be aware of us, although many of you are. CILT is rooted in a Nothing About Us Without Us disability rights movement. We're a community-based resource center run by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. Our programs are information and referral, volunteer program, peer support and parenting with a disability network, independent living skills training, attendance service application center, the direct funding program, our IDEA project, and a GTA Disability Coalition that's co-hosting today's event. New slide, please. Thank you. And a bit about the GTA Disability Coalition. It's a cross-disability network of organizations that advances the rights, priorities, and voices of disabled residents and deaf residents in the GTA. It's administered by CILT and funded by the United Way Greater Toronto. And the coalition primarily engages in municipal level advocacy while also supporting action at times on provincial and federal matters. Our priority areas are deeply affordable and accessible housing, disability poverty reduction, and accessible and affordable transit. Learn more and sign up for updates by visiting our website, www.GTACA.ca. And that's us as hosts. Next slide, please. And now we can focus on why we're here at this town hall, centering disabled and deaf residents in the City of Toronto 2026 budget. On February 10th, City Hall will vote on the 2026 city budget. It was launched on January 8th. It's a draft operating budget of $18.9 billion and a 2026 to 2035 capital budget of $63.1 billion. Now, the outcome of these votes will impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of disabled and deaf residents of Toronto and many service areas that matter to them. So housing and tenant supports, poverty reduction, transit, health, community investments in nonprofit service organizations, and more. And all of these areas, disabled people disproportionately in need of services and capacity and resources. Next slide, please. The slide's heading is Disabled Voices and Priorities in the City of Toronto Budget. Now, most of us in this room know well that it's vital that disabled residents' voices and our priorities be heard on in this budget. But we also know our community remains deprioritized in government budgets at all levels, despite having fallen even further behind during Canada's recent affordability crisis, which is still gripping the country. In recent years, more and more disabled residents have found it impossible to thrive in this city. A 2024 study by the Wellesley Institute found that to thrive in Toronto, a single disabled individual required an income of approximately $80,000. Now, we know a single adult on ODSP survives on under $17,000. So that math really doesn't add up. For a lot of disabled people in Toronto, $80,000 a year is really a pipe dream, given the resources they have to live with on a day-to-day basis. Some of the key drivers of the crisis. We know Toronto's sustained affordability crisis, deepening poverty, profound food insecurity. We have skyrocketing rents and eviction rates that are increasing, inaccessible housing, rising homelessness, to name just a number of key markers. And this has raised the stakes for disabled lives even higher in this year's budget. So we felt City Council needed to hear our community's calls, not just to hold the line on cuts, which is what we've heard. They're going to hold a line on cuts, but also to boldly fund and further enhance investments in vital services in this budget. Next slide, please. So what can we do? We're here to talk a bit about what are some of the policy and investment issues. You'll hear from TTCriders and Social Plan Toronto about some of the meat of those things, but really, how can you engage your voices on this budget? And there are a number of ways you can do that. So budget committee deputations, they start next week, Tuesday and Wednesday across the city. Letters and phone calls to your councillors and to the mayor, right up until budget day. That's an opportunity there. Social media messaging. There's a rally on February 10th you'll hear about. Another example of a way to engage. So there are options to choose from to how to animate your voice. Every budget season, our shared voices influence and votes that approve increases to priority programs, proving our civic voices do matter, even if sometimes it's very small asks to top up key investment areas. Some examples of 2026 budget cuts you can make that impact disabled people, enhance the budget's already enhanced funding for the rent bank. Disabled people disproportionately use the rent bank because of disability poverty. So that's one simple bucket. Enhance the allocation for the eviction prevention program. Again, preventing evictions for people who can barely afford their rents every month. Also investments in solutions that are missing in the budget, like more revenue tools, so we can have more services that are costed. It could be something around the police budget, like reallocating funds from that budget towards community services. So these are some examples. You'll hear much more from our guest in a moment. Next slide. So now I've just set a bit of the context for the town hall. I'm happy to pass it over to our two presenting organizations, starting with Israel Ahmed and Melissa Wong of Social Planning Toronto, and then followed by Andrew Pelletier and Adam Cahoon of TTCriders. I'm sending off to you, Melissa and Israel. Thanks so very much for being here with us.
I've just shared my screen, so I'm hoping you can all see that. Is it up? Yep, wonderful.
Good.
And I'm really sorry Ishrat's not able to join us today. She's not feeling great and taking the day off. So I'm sorry you'll not get a chance to hear from Ishrat today. She has decades of experience in city budgets but I'm going to share a little bit about what I'm presenting. My name is Melissa Wong. I'm the Director of Engagement and Strategic Initiatives at Social Planning Toronto. And I'm going to talk today about Social Planning Toronto, talk to you about our city budget work. I'm going to do a bit of an overview of the city budget itself and the city budget process, as well as some highlights from this year's budget, and also how and why to get involved and the kind of impact you can have on the city budget. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about some pieces in the budget related to accessibility, and also a little bit about addressing and some of the challenges within the city budget process that from an accessibility standpoint. So a little bit about Social Planning Toronto. We're a nonprofit charitable organization. We've been around for almost 70 years as a social planning council, doing community and civic engagement, at the municipal level, and also research focused on issues relating to poverty reduction and access to services such as housing, newcomer supports, community services, and employment. We're dedicated to achieving social and economic justice in our city for all residents. So at Social Planning Toronto, we get very excited about the city budget process. During and before the city budget process, we convene a large coalition of community partners to share information and coordinate joint advocacy initiatives. We also do engagement with community members. We offer workshops and training to support individuals to get involved in the budget process. And our research team also prepares easy to understand analysis, and we share resources and information on our website that can help you understand the budget and also prepare deputations or get involved in advocacy. So why does the city budget matter? So the city services really touch your life on a daily basis more than any other level of government, from transit to libraries, sidewalks and roads and childcare centers. And so, as David said, really critical decisions are going to be made on the city budget on February 10th. And it really tells you where city council's priorities are because that's where they're putting their money. Um, and these services, as I said, it really shapes your quality of life in the city. So how big is the City of Toronto budget? So as David shared as well, it's $18.8 billion. That's the operating budget. And it pays for services and programs that the city delivers, such as community housing, shelters, childcare, libraries, transit and recreation
Can you
centers.
give me a minute?
Sure. Oh, sorry. And that is actually larger than the annual budgets of some provinces in Canada. The 10-year capital plan for Toronto is now 63.1 billion, and that's money that gets allocated towards building and maintaining the city's infrastructure, so things like roads, sewer systems, and also pays for fixing and building new recreation centers, libraries, and community housing. So where does the money come from? So it comes from a number of different sources. Some comes from the property taxes. So about a third of the money comes from the property tax base. Another quarter of it comes from provincial and federal funding, often through agreements. Things like transit, housing, shelters are often paid through transfers. And then there is what they call service fees. So that's things like water fees and garbage and recycling, repeat parking that gets paid for it and covers the budgets of those services. And then some of it comes from reserves. That's funding that the city has put aside from previous years to cover costs that may occur in the future. And then about 6% of it comes from transit fares. So, and what else does the city budget fund? So just a little bit, it goes broader than just the kind of services that you would think of, the recreation centers and parks. It also covers childcare subsidies, community grants, as David mentioned, the eviction prevention programs and the rent banks, libraries, heat and flood protection programs. And it also covers strategies, socially focused strategies to address inequities, such as the poverty reduction strategy, the disability inclusion action plan that was just passed, the Reconciliation Action Plan, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Plan, the Youth Equity Strategy, Senior Strategy, the Toronto Strong Neighborhood Strategy, and SafeTO, which is the Community Safety Strategy. So, and just a little bit more about some of the other programs. As I mentioned, some of the programs are funded mainly through the services that they're paid for. Those ones are Toronto Water, Solid Waste, Toronto Parking and Toronto Parking Authority. So just a little bit about the budget process. So the city's budget process is almost a year-long process. Staff begin preparing the budget as early as the spring of the previous year. And then in the fall, community consultations are held. And these are public town halls, as well as virtual town halls that the budget chief and the chief financial officer host to hear from the public about what they see as priorities that they want to see in the budget. And then the budget is officially launched. It's a staff recommended budget that gets launched at the beginning of January. And the public has a chance to review it and share their views. And then those are when you get a chance to give deputations to the public, send emails in to the budget committee, and also telephone town halls are being held. And those all gather feedback, and the budget committee gathers that feedback. And then they hold a wrap-up meeting and they send any recommendations they have for changes to the budget to the mayor. And then the mayor is required, as per the new strong mayor powers, to release a budget by May 1st. Or sorry, February 1st. And then City Council is given an opportunity to make changes to that, or they can vote down the budget if they choose to. But that special meeting is held on February 10th. And City Council gets a chance to talk about the budget and decide if they want to make any changes to it. So also in the fall, the city has now started to do more community-focused conversations. So for the past couple of years, they've partnered with Albion Neighborhood Services to host local community-focused consultations with low-income residents. And these are smaller focus group-like sessions that are held at community-based agencies. And not surprisingly, at these sessions, people identified many of the same things that were identified through the public consultations, affordable housing, affordability in general, and the high cost of living in Toronto, transit, lack of affordable childcare and being able to access that childcare, and a lack of good jobs and tenant supports in the city. So a little bit about what's in this year's budget. So there were some important increases that we saw in this year's budget. There were increases to the city's rent bank program. There were increases to the Rent Safe TO program. That's a program that requires landlords to keep their buildings in good condition. There was an expansion of a new program that started last year, an air conditioner pilot that provided free air conditioners to low-income seniors. And this year, the budget's being significantly expanded and is going to include families with infants. And there's also been an expansion of the student nutrition program. So now it's going to, by the end of this year, it will be accessible to all children in all publicly funded schools across the city. And the city's snack program that's being offered in the city's camp programs is also being expanded. I'm sure TTCriders will go into this, but some really good news around transit fare capping, so you don't have to pay up for a Metro Pass, and also the mental health crisis on the TTC as well is in this budget. A continuation and the third phase of the Toronto Public Libraries open hours program is going through. So all libraries will be open 7 days a week. And there's some also important programs that are being offered through the Toronto Public Libraries, a reducing senior social isolation program, a financial empowerment service, and a social and crisis support service. And one exciting other program that's being offered that's new this year is free trips for students to the zoo. So our team did a little bit of a dive into what in this budget is supporting accessibility, and it's, to be honest, a little bit hard to dig in and find this information. It's scattered through the thousands of pages of budget documents, but we did find some of the information. There is an increase this year of $1 million in grants to retrofit or convert vehicles to accessible vehicles through the Accessibility Reserve Fund program, and that's going to taxi cab owners. So there's a larger volume of cars of taxi cabs that are accessible. There's a significant amount of work that's going into AODA compliance in the capital plan. The city listed 210 active projects and 135 projects that were completed construction to date. And so this includes some of the changes around Sankofa Square, around parks and recreation services and centers, and also city buildings. So a lot of that is just to bring the city's buildings and up to AODA standards. Um, as well, there were some increases to the individual grants program through the artist grants through economic and development. And so they are investing $400,000, and that will fund an additional 30 artists from equity deserving communities to pursue their creative projects, and an additional 20 artists who identify as deaf, living with a disability, or mental illness will be will benefit from the accessibility grant funding. They are also convening a community-led accessibility advisory to set the direction for future access to improvements to these grant programs. The budget also listed affordable housing in there and ensuring that the new supply of homes respond to the diverse housing needs of Indigenous, Black, and racialized communities, people with disabilities, women and gender diverse people, seniors, students, and 2S LGBTQIA plus persons. So I know the city has fallen behind at that, and I know CILT's done some work on this to ensure that new affordable housing is meeting has universal design planned directly into it. And as I mentioned, the Toronto Library is expanding their social and crisis support service. Just a little bit about some of the key budget dates. So as I mentioned, the budget launch is happening, the budget committee review, and some key dates are the budget consultations. And we do encourage folks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of getting involved and how you can get involved in the budget. But the budget committee public presentations are the 2 days that City Council hears from the public for deputations. And so you can go in person or virtually to the meetings are held with members of the budget committee at City Hall, the Etobicoke Civic Center, Scarborough Civic Center, and North York Civic Center. And then on the 23rd is when all of the budget committee decisions are wrapped up and the recommendations go to the mayor. The mayor releases their budget, and on February 10th is when the City Council does their final votes. As David mentioned, we have a big city budget rally outside of City Hall on February 10th to raise attention to some of the key investments that we want to see in the city budget. So if you're available and interested, we definitely encourage you to come out and join us. We're going to be there from about 12 to 2 p.m. and I'll share the links to that at the end of this presentation. So some of the ways that you can get involved in the city budget is, as I said, deputing and telling your story at the city budget. That's a really powerful way for the members of the budget committee to hear from you about what changes need to be in the budget, where do investments need to be, and how the budget is or isn't working for you as a person with a disability. You can also write to the budget committee. You can write directly to your city council or the mayor, and that's also an important way. If you you can go on the city's website and look up who your city councilor is and write directly to them about your concerns in the city budget. You can also organize a community action, work with others if you see that there's a key issue that needs to be addressed in the city budget, and also join other advocates to amplify your voice. I think there's maybe interest from folks in the Disability Action Coalition to GTA Disability Coalition to take some action or joint action, have some joint conversations about, how do we raise awareness about accessibility in this budget? I highlighted some of the investments, but certainly the city needs to do more in terms of accessibility. They need to go beyond just AODA requirements. And I'm personally not seeing that in the budget. There are some areas where they're making progress, but certainly there needs to be more. And I know many here have been talking about that for a long time. You can also, in terms of just writing to your city council, you can also ask to meet with your city councilor. Some city councilors are holding town halls, so I encourage you to attend those if you have them. If we're trying to share those on our website, so I'll share that link as well with all of our city budget resources. And also you can join actions that other folks are taking. TTCriders has a bunch of things going on to raise awareness about transit issues in the budget. There's other groups like Progress Toronto or Toronto Environmental Alliance, depending on the issues you're interested in as well. And uh, sorry. Yeah, we encourage you to get involved, share your voice. You can meet with your city councilor, join a town hall. But really, what we want to, the message we want to get across is that really it is important to have your voice, especially because there, the city is really needs to move forward when it on some of these issues of accessibility and inclusion in our city. I do want to highlight, though, that getting involved in the city budget process is not always easy. There's, as I mentioned, there's thousands of pages in the city budget documents, and we're not given a lot of time. The budget just got launched on the 8th. The presentations, the staff detailed presentations are just happening today, and we have to figure out all of that analysis and then tell the city what needs to be improved by next Tuesday and Wednesday. That's not a lot of time to be able to really understand what's in those budget documents. It's often technical language. Even for us who've been doing this budget work for many, many years, it's hard to even figure out between last year's budget documents and this year's budget documents where the changes are. Sometimes things are hidden and you're not sure if there's increases or cuts. And so it's not easy to navigate, and that's something we've been advocating around for a long time. There's also not very clear information about what accessibility and accommodations are available to individuals who are deputing. And so you can, when you register to depute, you can request accommodations, and they do often have ASL at the budget um, budget deputation, the budget committee deputation hearings. And you should, I do believe they may also have attendant care, but it's not clear. The city doesn't clearly say what accommodations can be requested, and that is something we've raised to them. And this goes not just for the budget process, but anytime somebody wants to attend a city committee to register to speak. As I sense it, it's not clear. But most of the budget committee meetings last year, I don't know if it was requested or not, but many of them had ASL and live captioning. But make sure if you are putting in your request that you require those services that you request it, because the city does not automatically provide these things, unfortunately. Also, the online process can be really hard to navigate. So if you are not technologically savvy, it can be a little tricky to figure out exactly how you get your request to speak in. And I just want to talk, so even though it's difficult, it does really make a difference. I just wanted to share some of the wins we've been able to see through ongoing advocacy. And that includes the Toronto Community Crisis Service. So being able to, one, have this plan as an alternative to calling the police when someone's in a mental health crisis, that is now expanded citywide and is offered 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The open hours plan, advocating for better hours for library services for everybody in the city, no matter where you live. That has been a big win. The Universal Student Food Program, ensuring that every child across the city has access to a snack program at school, and moving towards having a universal lunch program. That's the goal of the program. And some of the increases that we've seen over the past year, I think the mayor was highlighting the investments that have been put into tenant supports, eviction prevention, and the rent bank. Those have been significant investments that, many of them weren't there 10 years ago. The investments in affordable housing and shelters and drop-ins, we've had to fight hard to ensure that the drop-in sector and the shelters are being expanded and serving the communities that we need. Climate action, community services, Social Plan Toronto has always advocated for inflationary increases for community grants, and we've been able to win that. And this year we're even seeing that it's continuing at for all of the community grants and trying to expand that to all programs within the city so that community organizations can continue to deliver services. And of course, transit fare freezes, so no TTC increases, expanding services, and even the things to have children ride free on the TTC was through ongoing advocacy. And I'm sorry if I'm not catching everything in the chat. I'm just trying to make sure I can get through all of these slides. So I'll take a look. So as I mentioned, we have these resources. I'll share these links in the chat as well. These are the city's budget page where you can see all of the city's budget documents, learn about how to get involved in the city budget as well. It has how to register as well to speak at the deputations. I'm going to share our resource page. So on our city budget resource page, we have all of this links to the city budget documents. We also have links to our events as well as our analysis. And so I'll just pop that in the chat. What we have also is a City Budget Watch blog. If you want to get that analysis on the city budget, there's a link here on how you can sign up to receive those emails. And then I just want to share a little bit about some of the events that we have coming up. So tomorrow we have a housing advocacy workshop talking about the investments around affordable housing and tenant supports and shelters in the city budget. That's happening tomorrow from 10 to 12. So that's on our link, our events link, which I've just shared. We also have our town hall, as David mentioned, on Monday. That's happening from 2 to 4 p.m. These are all events that are being held on Zoom. And we are having live captioning and ASL interpretation for all of those events. We've already held 2 events, a City Budget 101 and Deputation 101 workshops. Those are going to be on our YouTube channel, and we did have ASL for those events as well, although we really had trouble with the recording. Zoom seems to have changed some of the settings, but we're working to make sure that all of these recorded events have included the ASL interpretation videos as well. So our contact information, just want to share that with you as well. We love if you would, if you could get involved with us, and feel free to reach out if you have questions, want to learn about our rally, or are interested in joining our budget coalition.
Wow. Thanks so much, Melissa. Jam-packed 20 minutes, actually. There's so
I
much
hope
in
I didn't
there.
go over.
By 2 minutes or so. We'll forgive you for that. You have lots to offer in terms of the pathways to engage and information on the budget. So hopefully getting lots of thumbs ups and hearts. So looks like it was very well received by folks in the room. So I want to save any unpacking of what you said for the Q&A so we can make sure and have enough time for people to have their full 30 minutes. But thanks so much for that great presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Pulsifer and Adam Cahoon of TTCriders, who's going to take us through transit in the budget. What's in, what's not, the good, the bad, and a little bit of the ugly. So go for it.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Folks see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa, for that. That was very comprehensive. We're going to cover some of the same territory, but not as much. My name is Andrew Pulsifer. I'm the executive director of TTCriders, which is a membership-based transit advocacy organization. Throw it over to Adam.
I'm Adam Cahoon. I'm one of the co-chairs of TTCriders that was started by a few other former people connected with CILT and a few, and they really it was basically Melissa Graham that really helped make TTC riders really understand that accessibility really needed something outside of ACAT. They do have the advisory committee on accessible transit, but they really did need an outside force to really talk to them and even let some of the now board members at the time they were commissioners really understand that not everything was as peachy as the TTC wanted them to think when it came to accessibility.
Precisely, yes, and that's basically the nutshell of the accessibility committee of TTC Riders. We were founded as an organization in 2010, around the same time that Rob Ford was elected mayor and started hacking and slashing away at all things to do with transit. So a voice for transit riders was
Yeah.
considered essential. To stand up to the
Yeah.
powers that be, to fight for better transit, to give a voice to transit users.
And I think the accessibility committee was founded in around 2016.
And I will give a little pitch here as well. The TTC Riders Accessibility Committee is looking for active members to
Yeah.
join. If
Yeah.
you are interested in becoming a member of the accessibility committee to help, to help inform our policies when it comes to wheel trans riders, transit riders with accessibility needs, and what have you. I think that it would be great to have you participate in that.
Yeah.
I will share my email in the chat if you are interested in being a part of that. So let's get right into the budget, though. We just have 20 minutes. So the TTC is a sort of is a somewhat separate body from City Hall. However, everything that happens in its budget needs to be voted on by City Council. The total 2026 operating budget for the TTC is $3.03 billion, with 1.48 billion required from the city. That's coming from property taxes. The other 1.55 billion dollars comes from TTC revenue, like the fare box, or a very small amount from like advertising on subways and at bus shelters and what have you, and a little tiny bit of operating support from the provincial government, specifically going to operating lines 6 and eventually 5 when it opens in the year 2055.
I think they also subsidize wheel trans.
Yes. The one thing that folks will notice is very much missing from here, and we'll get into this later in the presentation as well, is any kind of money from the federal government for operating our transit system. There are some capital expenses that the federal government are providing money to buy new subway cars on line 2, but they don't step up when it comes to providing ongoing sustainable operating funding for our transit system. There's a breakdown of the TTC budget here that you can use to follow along with this presentation as well at ttcriders.ca/2026 budget. So what's in this budget? Honestly, this budget is we're quite pleased as transit advocates about this budget. As Melissa spoke about in her presentation, affordability is front and center for new and enhanced funding for transit. Specifically, that provided this passes, we will have a third consecutive year of a fare freeze. Fares will not be raised, helping people afford their transit rides better. They're introducing a new system called fare capping. So they are replacing the monthly pass, the very expensive upfront cost of a monthly pass, with a cap on fares. Instead of paying $155 at the beginning of the month, you're just going to be stopped being charged for transit after you take a certain number of trips. We'll get into the sort of more nitty-gritty details of that soon. There are moderate service increases, bringing us somewhat closer to pre-pandemic levels. As Melissa mentioned as well, the expansion of Toronto Community Crisis Service Workers as a pilot project on line 1 of the subway, which is really a great something that we have called for, that is a non-enforcement based approach to addressing safety issues on transit. We have to realize that a lot of people we hear from transit riders often that they feel unsafe with an increased police presence on transit. So less enforcement is always something that we're going to be pushing for. Funding for a bunching and gapping pilot, we'll talk about that a bit later too, and of course some good expansion on Wheel-Trans. Well, what's missing? Like I said before, lack of operating funding from the federal and provincial governments. Fare capping is coming, but it's coming in September 2026 at a cap of 47. We would like that to be faster. New revenue tools to fund the TTC. If the federal and provincial governments don't step up with additional operating funding, the TTC is going to face a bit of a hole next year, and they may see the only solution being raising fares, which we consider a line in the sand that is unacceptable. So we need new ways of funding transit. Lower student fares, and not a lot of funding for the wayfinding strategy. So I won't go too much into detail on this because Melissa covered this quite comprehensively in her presentation. The only real difference between this is that the TTC budget comes out before the city budget, and that was a day before. But there are opportunities to depute with the telephone town halls, the last of which is happening this evening. And the Budget Committee public presentations, which are happening next week. I'll push our own deputation training, which is going to be taking place on Monday. We held one already last week on Monday, January 19th at 7 p.m. You can sign up for that at ttcriders.ca/shifts, and I'll put that in the chat soon. So just going into some finer details on transit in this budget. So this is, as I said, this would be the third consecutive year of a fare freeze, keeping fares fixed at the rate they are now across all levels, for fare pass users, for seniors, for youth, and for the general fare. This is important because over the past 3 decades, TTC fares have risen nearly twice the rate of inflation. So we're still, even with this fare freeze, we're still very much just catching up to where they should have been if they were just tied to the rate of inflation. Unfortunately, the way that the TTC funds itself, it is far more reliant on transit fares to pay for their operations. It's one of the only ones that relies on property taxes and the city and fares to be able to pay for TTC, to be able to pay for their operations. And it's one of the only major cities in North America that doesn't receive operating funding from higher orders of government. Freezing TTC fares supports more affordable and accessible transit. The other thing that isn't touched on very often is the TTC's own reporting says that any increase in fares will result in a drop in ridership. So if you raise fares even 10 cents, there are some people who are going to choose not to take transit because they can't afford it. And that's a super important statistic that we need to that we need to bring up whenever somebody talks about a fare increase. There is also, every single year of the past 3 years, when a fare freeze is put forward in the budget, a Conservative councillor puts forward an amendment to raise transit fares. And every so often, there are some other councillors that support that. So when we are deputing, when we are talking about this budget, we are very much trying to defend this notion of freezing fares. Ryan, yes, we'll talk about Fare Pass when I get to fare capping, but yes, I will talk about that right now. But after this is just a chart of where transit fares, the rate of inflation versus transit fares over the last 30 years. So fare capping. So just getting into the nitty gritty about this a little bit, fare capping is a program that allows transit users to ride free after a certain number of rides in a day, week, or month. The city is proposing a monthly fare cap, although other cities do have weekly and daily caps as well. This is most beneficial for fare passed seniors and youth passes because it's the same cap across all fare levels. So a fare pass user will stop being charged after 47, which is the initial proposal is to have the cap be 47 taps. You'll stop being charged after 47 in September 2026. And then in September 2027, that cap is going to lower to 40. This makes a huge difference for Fare Pass users who right now there is an option for a monthly pass, but it's around $120, a huge upfront cost that's due on the first of the month, the same day that your rent is due. And that just makes it a lot more affordable for so many folks. Fare capping is something that a lot of major jurisdictions already do. Edmonton, Hamilton, York Region, New York, Paris, London all have an element of fare capping. Hamilton and Ottawa got it first. How can Hamilton and Ottawa get something before we do? It's absurd. It's absurd that they're trailblazers in this. We do have the question as why it will take so long. We would like it to be implemented faster. It is really a political decision based on property tax increases and also ridership. We do hope that we see ridership numbers grow so that maybe they could afford it earlier at a lower cap. That would be excellent.
Andrew,
yes.
Andrew, David here.
Hi,
Got
David.
about 4 more minutes.
Oh no.
I know. Yeah. 4 to 5 more minutes to wrap.
Okay,
A
I
few
will
minutes
I will
behind.
power
Sorry.
through. Just this
Thanks.
slide just talks about some service increases that we get. We're getting more reliable service to bring us back closer to pre-pandemic levels. And then I'll pass it over to Adam to talk about the Wheel-Trans enhancements.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
The Wheel-Trans budget is a total of 201.7. It does seem like it has gone up, but some of that is in the like they are overspending. Again, they're noticing what we've known for years. The family of services isn't quite the success they dreamed of, so they are over budget. One of the things they hear that they are opening a semi-satellite division of Wheel-Trans out on Kipling to give service to the West End. So, as some of you may know, there are drivers that are coming in from places further west in the Golden Horseshoe. So they will be able to use this new division and not have to drive all the way down to Leslie and Commissioner pick up a bus and then go pick up somebody at like out on the Queensway and stuff like that. So that is why it'll look a little bigger. Next slide. The other thing that is sort of missing is wayfinding. There is a bit in the capital budget, but we're, as any of us know with cognitive disability, finding your way around the TTC, unless you're going on the same route every day, but with diversions and with all the service interruptions, you can't really rely on doing the same route, same trip at the same time reliably. So that can be an issue. Next slide, please. We are definitely asking for the provincial and federal governments to chip in, and TTCriders is gonna really have to get back to really pushing at the provincial and federal government, and realizing that even capital, if Canada's largest city does not run efficiently, the whole body of Canada and the whole body of the province suffers. So they really do need to bring some of this up. And that is one of the things that we're really pushing for as members of TTCriders, and that's we're hoping to do in the coming months and years. Next slide.
Yeah, I think we'll just sort of run through this, but we just agreed that we need more money from the federal and provincial governments, and that's a big part of this. This is just a chart of where we actually receive funding. So again, you see the biggest missing one is the federal government. Passenger revenue accounts for 35% of the operating budget. 49% is the City of Toronto, which means property taxes for the most part, and then a little bit of money from the feds, the province rather, and some other things. Rushing through then those last couple of slides, but just hammering home that we need more money from the federal government. We are going to be holding a deputation training tomorrow. Not tomorrow, Monday, January 19th at 7 p.m. If you are interested in taking part, please do sign up at ttcriders.ca/shifts. If you are interested in getting involved with the Accessibility Committee, with TTC Riders as a whole, or what have you, you can email me at andrew@ttcriders.ca. And that's it.
That's
my
it.
presentation.
Thanks, Andrew and Adam. Appreciate you unpacking transit for us in the budget. Some good news stories in there and some gaps for sure that you kind of highlighted for us. And I'm hoping
I'm going to interject. Sorry, Kim here behind the scenes. Andrew, can you just plunk in the town hall and also your contact info in the chat, please? Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Kim. And, after Wendy, it's going to be Wendy saying a few words before we move to the Q&A. I know you missed getting some things in. Andrew, there might be an opportunity to do that during the Q&A, depending on the questions. So thanks again, both of you, Andrew and Adam. Great presentation. And I'll pitch it now to Wendy to say a few words and reflections. Wendy?
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Porch. I'm the Executive Director at CILT. I am a white disabled woman with long dark hair and usually red lipstick. And today I have a red or black flowered dress on. I just want to start with a few additional thanks from me. So thank you to everybody who's been here today to speak about this critical issue. Thank you to our core team who has organized the work. Thank you to the GTA Disability Coalition partners who are here as well. And thank you to all of you who are in the room to be a part of this discussion. It is so important that we start to become involved in these kinds of decisions, because we need to influence the decisions in a way that we have not been very successful at so far. As you likely know, here at CILT, as an independent living center, you heard about this a little bit from David already. Our job is really to support disabled people to be engaged with the community, to be able to live in community in the way that they hope to. Here for us, our community is literally the City of Toronto. And as you've heard from most of the speakers here today, the way that the budget influences the city cannot be overstated. So what we see when we see a budget is we see real tangible priorities being pulled out. What are the things that the city considers to be important, worthwhile, worthy of funding? And what are the things that the city just completely ignores or leaves off the table? Who is present? What priorities matter, and who is not at the table and who is invisible? These are the things that we can see clearly in budgets, as you've heard from our very esteemed speakers here today. Budgets are where priorities become real. They literally do shape what exists. And one thing that I think is really important to say clearly today is that the precarity that many disabled people feel and experience is not accidental. So it's not about individual failures, it's structural, and the structure is the budget. When systems are underfunded or hard to navigate, when disabled people cannot access what they need, cannot stay in housing, cannot afford to eat regularly, when these systems don't function properly, it is disabled people who feel it first. When there are delays, gaps, rigid rules, this is not just about inconvenience. This causes instability and it builds over time. And these are gaps that people know about, you know about. They are predictable. So what I'm here to really talk about is to just say, again, that your experiences, disabled people's experiences, need to be made visible in the context of budget discussions. If there is something that you think in your life, it shouldn't be this hard. If there is a structural barrier that you keep coming up against in the context of the city, time and time again, as you've heard from some of our speakers already today, come and talk about those barriers, come and talk about those continual challenges, because those are the structures that need to be addressed by the budget. One thing I wanted to say too is budgets, as you've heard too, they don't need to be expert language. You can come and talk about one thing. It can be your own experience. That's critical too, because many folks who are involved in the budgeting process do not even know disabled people. So come talk about your issue. Don't think it needs to be perfect. You just need to be present. One thing I wanted to add that we haven't really heard about here today, although we've heard about plenty, is an issue that comes up frequently for our community, and that is that the City of Toronto, across all of its services and programs, asks questions about how they're doing. How are we doing in terms of our service provision? They very often do not ask if you are a disabled person. And so the problem comes when we try to find in evaluation data disabled people's experiences. Our data is not easy to find. It cannot be disaggregated. So if while you're doing your deputation, you can find some space or some opportunity to talk about there needing to be a disability lens across data collection and data analysis too, that would be great. Not only do we need to fund all of these initiatives, we need to know whether or not disabled people are actually being positively impacted. So that's a couple of thoughts from me. I do hope that you've found the town hall so far to be something that helps you to feel as though this process might be a little bit more accessible than it had been, maybe a little bit less intimidating. But we really do want to hear your messages. When we can coalesce across messaging and say disabled people are still missing, you need to pay attention to our community, we have more power in the room. So just wanted to say thanks again, everybody, for being here. Thanks to all of our speakers. And we're going to follow up now. Now that we've heard about the process, we've heard about a number of the items that are relevant to our community, we're going to follow up with a Q&A. And I'm going to hand it back to David and the core team. But thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Wendy. Great way to set up our Q&A, actually. Just the framing you put on this. It's really, really excellent. So we received some